Hello, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Bob Schechterle. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Agilysys, and I'll be your host. You know, we've all experienced so many changes so quickly, and the hospitality industry has been hit especially hard. But of course, we've also been stepping up to provide rooms for first responders, hospital beds, and meals for those who are hit hardest. There's also a personal dimension for us here on this call. Most of you, like me, are probably working from home in order to support social distancing. Thus, today's topic, how social distancing is influencing hospitality technology. You know, as an industry, we've already been embracing mobility and self-service, but now there are new demands and implications along with long-term effects. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on now in hospitality. What are some of the tech considerations for whatever the new normal is going to be? And how do you prepare for a post-COVID world? Now, I have a couple of housekeeping items here. First of all the phone lines are going to be muted. If you want to ask a question, you'll see a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to enter it there, and we'll get to it. Depending on how it fits into the presentation, we may ask and answer the question during the session. Others we'll get to at the end. So we're going to begin with a poll. We're going to have several of these throughout the session, and this will give us a chance to see how it works and have some experience with it. So why did you decide to join this webinar? First one is knowledge building. There's networking opportunities, getting ready to reopen soon, or my favorite, the boss made me do it, or I'm bored and I'm just attending every webinar I possibly can. So we'll give folks a minute here. Well, you know, it's a little bit, I'm seeing the results add up. It's a little bit like watching the primary results. I'll tell you right now that knowledge building, we're declaring a winner officially, even though the polling isn't over. It's won by, it's at 80% right now. So knowledge building, which makes sense. And, you know, we're certainly going to have a lot of content here to help you with that. So next, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Luke Pfeiffer is a Senior Director of Product Management here at Agilysys. Since joining in 2009, he's served in a variety of roles and is now responsible for driving the vision and direction for our hotel property management technology solutions. Prior to Agilysys, he enjoyed about 10 years in hospitality operations, most recently at Kalahari Resorts, where he served as the Rooms Division Director. He's also had experience at Gemstone Resorts, now Benchmark, Great Wolf Resorts, and Pride Hospitality. In addition, he founded Global Logic's GuestLink, a service that installed some of the first Wi-Fi enabled hotels in Wisconsin. Luke holds a BA in hospitality management from Lakeland University, and so has a lot of experience from a hands-on perspective with the topics we're going to talk about today. But also, this isn't just about Logic. We also have with us Mike Hinojosa, our Senior Director of Product Management for Food and Beverage. So he's going to be on board and contributing to the Q&A we may have as it pertains to those aspects of our solutions and about concerns in this particular part of the industry that we're dealing with. So with that, Luke, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Bob. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for joining today. We're definitely grateful and thankful for the tremendous response and interest in today's webinar. Our registration filled up relatively quickly, and thank you to all of those that could make it. Our topics today will span across the industry from hotel operations to food and beverage management, covering all the verticals: hotels, resorts, casinos, food service management, and higher ed. Today, we're going to really focus on three topics, as you can see here on the agenda. The first being filling the void. What is our industry doing today? And the outreach of our industry and creativity has just been tremendous. Tech considerations for the new norm. What this new norm is, we don't know. It's a horizon that we're all on a journey together, and we look forward to talking through some considerations in that space. And then being prepared for post-COVID-19. You know, from the survey results, about 16% said, you know, the reason you're attending today is getting ready to reopen soon, which is great. I'm really excited to see there's many that are looking towards the future and what that means. So we're going to start with filling the void and what our industry is doing today. If you think back to January, social distancing probably was not a term most of us used. Fast forward to April, and it's a term that we hear every minute of the day. It's what our life is all about. I have a 5-year-old daughter, and it's just absolutely amazing how, she keeps saying, so we can't do that because of social distancing. It's a term that is now a norm in our society. So we're going to do another poll to kind of kick things off here. And this one is, specifically for the operators that are on the call with us today. We have a variety of individuals that have attended this webinar, but for the operators, interested to know, what is the current status of your operation? Are you open? Are you partially open? Or are you fully closed? And we're going to let those results come in, and I'll go over those in just a minute. Our industry has been hit hard. There is no question about this, and I think everyone is probably well aware of some of the staggering numbers that have been coming out. STR for the week ending April 4th reported that U.S. occupancy is at 21%. Canada is down to 12%, and RevPAR has dropped a whopping 81%. Occupancy globally is at levels we have never seen before. Having spent a lot of time in the industry and coming over to the tech side, it hits home personally to many of us. And together, we're holding strong and planning for the future. And government programs globally are coming out with various programs. And for those senior leaders on this call, I hope that you're spending time reviewing some of those programs. There's some good guides being published by many of the industry trade associations as well about how to best make use of those programs for the hospitality industry. There is some hope out there, slight recovery in China, right? STR is reporting about 90% of hotels have reopened. There's obviously a huge concern of, so we're doing social distancing now. Now we break down that social distancing barrier. Is there a second wave? Does this all restart again? And anxiety is a big part of our lives today, and we're gonna have to understand that's gonna be a big part of our guests and our staff's lives for some time to come. So jumping back to the poll results real quick, not real surprising here, but 58% are reporting that you're closed and 34% are partially open. Only 8% are open. And that really goes into what these numbers are in terms of the impact that it's had on the industry. So thank you everyone for filling that out. Looking over on the food and beverage side, the National Restaurant Association published some pretty staggering numbers as well. $25 billion in lost sales. Yes, that's a B. Over 3 million in layoffs, and I bet that number has only increased over the course of time. And 44% of operators are temporarily closed. What's really great though, and what's really important, is everyone's standing strong together. We have not seen, I think, a situation like this ever before. But seeing how strong everyone's standing together, be it from vendors to operators, and how everyone's really working together is really an important part of our industry and has been very promising. I'm so proud of what everyone's been doing. I look at it, the hospitality industry, what do? We care for others, right? And everyone's been doing such an amazing job of stepping up to that, even when there's no business, when there's no revenue coming in, going out of their way to be able to help others. And along the way, being really creative. Hotels that have turned into temporary hospitals, starting Chicago, I think, was probably one of the first major cities that announced programs like this. New York City recently announced earlier this month, they did a $250 million contract to provide rooms for patients and essential workers as well. There's programs like AHLA, Hotels for Hope, that is offering the ability for hotels to be able to list that they're available for housing essential workers, right? Providing that channel to be able to bring in limited amount of business, but to bring in business and to be able to help out those essential workers that right now are doing so much to care for our economy. Contracts going out to government agencies for homeless shelters. I'm seeing this throughout. I know I live in the Seattle area, and I know Seattle's been doing this as well, is trying to spread out the crowding that's in homeless shelters by offering the homeless the opportunity to stay in hotels. And then drive-through testing. sites. Again, real creative ways that operators are making use of their facilities and properties. There's also many other ways. One area that I think is great is there's many hotels and other restaurants and organizations that are reaching out and finding new ways to connect, sharing recipes that they have, doing videos of entertainment online. I've seen the cruise industry do this quite a bit as well, keeping guests still engaged in the brand and giving something to do while we're all social distancing at home. Moving on to the food and beverage side, just thinking outside the box, right? Online ordering and delivery. How many restaurants and food and beverage facilities out there didn't have online ordering and delivery? It was a very small portion of your sales, and that has clearly changed, and we're going to talk a lot more about that today. Changing from being a restaurant to selling groceries, especially in areas where grocery stores may not be as prevalent, or that grocery stores were just getting inundated with the volume. If there's one area of the economy in terms of sales, some of the statistics that came out recently with retail sales, groceries and food and beverage sales from a grocery standpoint are up. Whenever to-go orders were done, how often were there alcoholic beverages that you ordered with it, right? But alcoholic beverages are core to our profit margins. So really being creative and thinking outside the box here and offering those, that maybe I'm going to order my burger, and as a result, also you're going to be able to offer some of the favorite drinks that you have at your restaurant. And then probably some of the most heart-touching is providing essential workers food. There's a local donut shop here. It's owned by a local family, and they've been doing donuts for essential workers. They have no revenue coming in. They're not open. They're not asking for any money. They're just coming in. They're working real hard, and they're providing food for those in the community. And that really says a lot. That's who we are as an industry. That's our DNA, and that's our core. Many other things too, as restaurants began to close up, and as the orders came out, we realized we had a whole stock of food that was going to spoil, and making those donations to pantries. There's even operators out there that are still keeping some of the normal orders in place and donating that food to pantries. And then expanding on gift cards and merchandise. So food and beverage outlets that maybe didn't have as large of a focus on this, but put a lot larger focus on it. It can help with a little bit of cash flow now. And again, keeps that guest engaged with your brand. So not only being real flexible in terms of use of the facilities, but adapting to consumer trends, right? Delivery and takeout, this is across all verticals, higher ed, corporate cafeteria, resort, casino, standalone restaurant. This is now a norm to consumers. What was uncomfortable before, or maybe not a characteristic I would do on a daily basis to order for delivery, now is becoming a norm. And we're going to spend time talking about that a little later. Virtual meetings and events. Here we're all on this webinar, right? But how many of us haven't attended a virtual happy hour? Whoever thought of that date back to January. Team meetings and company meetings are being planned. Hotel operators are helping plan virtual meetings, making use of the event staff and being creative in the ways that they can have that staff help. Event business obviously has taken the biggest hit, and for properties that are group and event centric, you're probably in that partially open or most likely that closed state if you're heavily based on group events. And then online scavenger hunts. We participated, there's a local business here in the area that does scavenger hunts and team building. Well, there's none of that happening right now, and they turned to start offering online scavenger hunts. The first one they did was with a group of a couple hundred in the area here, and then it grew into the thousands, and now they're doing them for corporations as well. But it's a lot of fun. It was a great way to be able to bond as a family, and it's also a great way to be able to bond across the company while we are social distancing. Being flexible, right? Who would have ever thought in January that would be saying cancellation policies and advanced deposits and resort fees, all those are going to be changed. It's nothing we thought of, but in the environment we are now, flexibility is so important to guest confidence. Leaving rooms unoccupied for 72 hours or more. You see this as being a commitment to guests that rooms are not occupied. Now, while there's mixed studies on this in terms of the benefit of it, it does help provide some of that confidence to guests. Is this going to become a new norm? and it's something we need to be thinking about. And to think about, how is your PMS going to handle this? If government regulations truly come out that say rooms can't be occupied for 72 hours or for 5 days or 24 hours, whatever that number might be, how are you going to handle that? When you're at 5% occupancy, it kind of happens on its own. It's not too hard, but as occupancy begins to pick back up, like we're seeing in China, and you get to the 20 to 30% range, you're not going to be able to handle that manually. It's just going to be tedious. And as Agilysys, we're committed on solutions to help with these possible regulations that could be forthcoming. And then I think everyone probably has on your website, you go to the website and you've got a commitment to your guests, right? A commitment for cleanliness and sanitization. Building guest confidence and making sure that you have this commitment so the guests who are still traveling can have a level of understanding of what you're doing to protect them. For properties that still have staff that are working, they're taking good advantage to be able to deep clean rooms. It's good opportunities, shampooing carpets, moving furniture, and really deep cleaning the rooms. Performing preventative maintenance, from room maintenance to interior, exterior, and equipment maintenance. Deep cleaning food and beverage outlets, all the kitchen equipment, grills, vents. And organizing back of house areas. As Bob mentioned in my introduction, I ran the rooms division at a large resort, and obviously those back of house areas and those closets, I always wanted to have the cleanest, but you just never had the time to do full reorganization of them. And this is a good opportunity if you do have staff that is still working, or you're taking advantage of some of the government programs that are out there to be able to keep staff on payroll. And then we're all giving technology a little loving care, right? Our little pun on TLC. There really is no better time to be focused on your technology. Making sure your systems are upgraded, you got the latest security patches, and you're in the best position for post-COVID-19. Good opportunity to data cleanse, cleaning up profiles, merging profiles, ensuring other data and setup and configuration is clean in your system. Updating standard operating procedures, not only from the aspect of what is it going to be like post-COVID-19, which is going to change many of our standard operating procedures, but just reviewing them. It's a good opportunity to be able to review them. And for those, especially at the management level, if you are working remote, that it's something that can be done remote. Staff that are still working, providing training. I participated in a call this morning with HT&G. Every Wednesday morning, they have a call with the global strategy team, and I participated in that. And one of the topics that came up on that call this morning was taking advantage of the customer or the government programs that are out there to keep guests on payroll or employees on payroll. You could do different type of alternative training, like English as a second language or other type of continuing education. It doesn't necessarily need to be just training for job-specific tasks. And then, most importantly, evaluating systems and purchases for the new norm. Being prepared that as business begins to ramp up, that you're absolutely ready and have all the technology in place and ready to go, that you're not falling behind. So I'm going to move into tech considerations for the new norm. And we must react and implement quickly. It cannot take long to come up with solutions. There's just no time. Things are changing so rapidly in our economy at the moment, and we have no playbook to execute off of. We're literally designing our playbook on the fly, and this is what we're all working together on to come up with the best solutions. I mean, there's clearly a lot of uncertainty on what is next. So looking at this picture, is this really going to be the new norm, right? Will everyone wear a mask? Are you going to have to stand 6 feet away from the front desk and then just throw the folio as a paper airplane to the guest, right? It's humorous to think about it, but the norm that used to be, it's going to change. Things are going to be different. And we're going to talk about a lot of those here over the next couple slides. And we always used to say, stay safe, right? But now it's stay healthy. And as a hospitality industry, I always kind of joked when I started at Agilysys, and we had hired a couple individuals from the tech side of the industry, and we would all come up when we met with customers and would give each other hugs, would shake hands. That was our DNA. That's our DNA in the hospitality industry, right? We care about each other. Just think about how much that has changed, right? We don't shake hands anymore. We clearly don't give hugs. That new norm is going to challenge the DNA that is core to us in this industry. Looking on the food and beverage side, think of what a guest may think. I will not dine indoors. I do not want to touch a menu, and I will not hand my credit card over to a server. But I want to pay an order on my own device. Even if only 10 to 20% of consumers act differently, it's going to have a profound impact on our business. So looking at the new norm, it's like looking out into the ocean, right? There's no end in sight. We don't have that playbook to execute off of. We're having to completely think outside the box. We're having to be flexible. I saw a quote that said, you have to be the culture, you got to create a culture of innovation. And that's really what needs to be focused now. The big term always on the technology side was you have to be agile. Develop an agile way and you can develop more rapidly. Now as an industry, we're going to have to be agile. There's obviously an endless set of tweets, posts, articles, other ideas about what the norm will be. And we're going to talk through what some of those are, especially as it relates to guests wanting more personal control of their experience. So you think about it, right? We're all having to execute on the different ideas that we have, right? And guests are going to want to be on their own devices. They're going to want to remove that physical touch point. They're going to want to drive self-service at property, and we'll talk through some solutions there. Then we're going to go through some other considerations as well for the new norm. So starting with online food and beverage ordering, this has got to be by far the most impactful. So far, it had almost immediate turnaround. For operators that already had online food and beverage ordering in place prior to all of the stay-at-home orders in place and the government's closing down restaurants and everything, have fared very well, very quick. For those where consumers weren't used to ordering online, they obviously have been rapidly deploying the various solutions, but the turnaround may have not quite been the same. And consumers are now forced into this comfort of this new norm to be able to order online. Well, maybe we used a Uber Eats or DoorDash or any of these other offerings that are out there. It's now a norm. Maybe we did it once in a while before. It wasn't part of our normal routine, right? It's very much like when Uber and Lyft and all those just started. We take a taxi, we were used to it. Consumer behavior didn't change, and at some point it just changed. Well, here's a forcing function that is changing consumer behavior on how food is ordered. And it's important when you roll these out that you align it to your operations as well. When you think about a restaurant, be it a grab-and-go scenario, you could control the volume by your queues. When you look at a fine dining or a sit-down restaurant, you control it by the number of tables and a wait list that you have. As soon as you open this up online, where anyone can order, now you can get 1,000 orders at once. You're going to have to make sure you have solutions that can properly throttle this so you don't overwhelm your operations, and that you can make sure the guest has a very seamless experience. Now, that seamless experience is really important. A lot of the solutions that are out there that properties have rolled out quickly don't have the level of integration that are really required for that seamless experience. And Agilysys Our Guest Buy on Demand is a solution that we have that you're seeing the screenshot of here that is fully integrated with our InfoGenesis point of sale application, allows you to be able to rapidly offer online ordering, be it in any type of a grab-and-go situation. You can handle it to be able to do delivery. We also have throttling automatically as well. Now, one thing to consider when you think about, on-demand and online food and beverage ordering is the impact on room service. You always had a captive audience for room service, and that was the option. If I came into my hotel room, I probably didn't pick up my phone, and I probably didn't order from a restaurant down the street. But now we got to think about how is that going to impact it. And if you don't have solutions where I can just as easily order room service on my phone as I could from a restaurant down the street, there's a potential to lose business there. On the counter to that, it also gives the opportunity for operations to think outside the walls of their property. Room service and a lot of the restaurants, a lot of times you thought of a captive audience within your property. Now it allows you to be able to expand out more globally, or even to those other hotels that might be in the area that don't have food and beverage offerings. One thing we're doing for the industry here at Agilysys and for our customers specifically is we are offering a free 90-day trial to existing customers on supported versions of InfoGenesis with our Guest Buy on Demand. So Bob, I think I see you have a few questions. Do we want to take a couple Q&A questions here? We'll keep going here and we'll see if we can come back to Bob for some of the Q&A questions that came up.
I'm sorry, I'm here. Luke, I'm here.
All right. Okay, all right.
Somebody's asked, what are the things that operators should consider first as they start to ramp back up?
So I think there's many things. We're going to go over a number of those as we get into the post-COVID-19. Things that you have to think about ramping back up immediately. It's going to be on your systems. Are all your systems up and running? Are all your staff properly trained? Like I said, we'll go through some of those details in a little bit, and if that doesn't answer the question, we can dive into it a little bit further.
Great.
Good. All right. Thank you, Bob. So moving on, that was the food and beverage side. When you move on to the lodging side is reducing those physical touch points. There's a lot of them when you think of hotel interaction. Arriving at a hotel, you go to the front desk, you're greeted by a doorman, you're greeted by valet, all of these touch points. And it's going to be very interesting as we move into the coming weeks and months and years ahead, that the impact that this is going to have on consumers and our guests. And like I mentioned before, even if it's only 10 to 20% that change behavior, that's going to have a profound impact on our industry. With our Agilysys, our Guest Express Mobile, we allow mobile check-in, checkout, which gives you that full touchless experience. The guests can now complete their check-in on their device, do it 24 hours, 74 hours in advance. It's completely configurable. But it allows this creation of a seamless guest journey that can be completely touchless. From booking online with Agilysys, our Guest Book, all the way through check-in, we just were talking about with Agilysys, our Guest Express Mobile, and then our loyalty offering with Agilysys Customer Engagement Suite. And then booking dining reservations online with Agilysys, our Guest Seat. So really giving the option, it's not taking away from guests that still may want to have that touch point, but giving that option to be able to have that touchless experience along the way. And it's not all about necessarily having mobile keys. There's high benefits when you think of mobile check-in, checkout without mobile keys as well, is that you can still pre-register the guests, so that touch point when they do go to pick up their key is a reduced touch point. It's not as long, it's not necessarily as prolonged. Maybe the front desks have pre-made all the keys beforehand with gloves on to make sure they're in sanitary envelopes, and then those keys are handed out to guests when they arrive. So it gives a lot of options for your guests, and it's something that you can be installed relatively quickly and is seamless across all of our PMS products. It's important to think about modifying operations here as well, just like we were talking about with food and beverage as well. So again, you're going to think about the different flows of guests as they arrive. If they are pre-registering, you don't want to ask them all the same questions again. When they actually come to check in, you want to make sure when they come to pick up their key, you just verify that ID and hand them their key. Now, you can automate that whole experience with Digital Key as well, which is a solution we offer as a part of our Guest Express Mobile, as well as doing ID verification. So you can still have that level of security that the guest has been authenticated, who they are, they've had to take a picture of their ID, take a selfie, match is done between the two, and then the guests can go about their way directly to their room. And then it's going to be important with staff augmentation as we look at occupancy coming back online, and going back to the question a little bit that Bob brought up. One of the important things is going to be thinking about, as you ramp back up, how do you staff your properties when you're at an occupancy level which is much lower than normal? As you look at properties in China, although 90% have reopened, they're still in that 20 to 30% occupancy range. We're not used to operating in that range for any period of time in this industry. So it's going to be really important to also have solutions that can allow you to have lower levels of staff to begin with as you're ramping up operations, but still allow for a seamless guest experience. Contactless payments. This has to be one of the things that probably you hear about the most as well. I went into a pharmacy here a couple days ago, and as I was going to check out, of course, everyone's stationed. You're standing on the X's on the floor, 6 feet apart, right? They got the sneeze guards up at the checkout lanes. We probably have all experienced that if we've been out. What I found real interesting was the gentleman who was checking out the guests at the pharmacy was explaining to them how to use the tap on their card. So he was looking to see if there was a symbol on the card, or asking them to look to see if there's a symbol on the card, or if they had Apple Pay on their phone, and was helping and encouraging them to use tap to pay. Now in the US, tap to pay on cards has not been as common as it is internationally, but we're going to see a lot more of that as people look to remove those physical touch points of interaction. And it's really important that as you look at your applications and your software, is if your devices are contactless EMV capable. There's 2 different versions of contactless with credit cards. The old legacy is not EMV, so that is being phased out, in the process of being phased out by all the major card brands. Most of them have already phased that out. So it's really important you have devices that are EMV capable. And Agilysys rGuest Pay is our payment solution. It's point-to-point encrypted, it's fully contactless, and is EMV capable. For those that are Agilysys customers, I encourage you to reach out to your account rep or the support team to ensure you're on the proper version of rGuest Pay to support EMV contactless. Kiosks. Kiosks are going to be pretty interesting in terms of how they play, and especially as we think about they are a physical touch point, but you've removed that human element. Agilysys rGuest Buy is our flexible design kiosk to handle these scenarios and more. You can handle them across various entities, so you can use it for a buffet. You think about today, standing in a line to be able to be seated at a buffet, right? That's not social distancing, so now you're gonna have to spread that line apart further. But by having kiosks, individuals can just come up, they can indicate they wanna sit at what time, pay for that buffet, so the payment's taken care of, and then come back at their scheduled time to actually be seated. Again, removing some of those lines that might be and some of those physical touch points. Grab and go scenarios, kiosks play very well in. Fast casual, you can actually come in, order your burger, order your modifiers, have the food cleanly prepared in the kitchen, and then available for pickup or delivery. And pantry. You think of hotel operations and the pantries we have today, again, this gives the ability to remove another physical human touch point by having to take your items up to the desk to pay for them. And you can just have a kiosk in the pantry to be able to pay for them.
Hey, Luke, this is Bob.
Yes, go ahead, Bob.
Sorry, but we did have a question related to buffet here that I wanted to ask you. The questioner says, we run a package-inclusive resort with a gourmet buffet breakfast and dinner restaurant. How do you think buffets will come out of all of this?
Mike Hinojosa, is that an answer you'd like to jump in on?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to have an impact. And there was another question by the same attendee regarding restaurant floor plans. And I think the conversation or the questions are similar in nature. I know the buffet is relative to the fact that you've got people coming up and physically touching food. And I don't know. I mean, I think buffets are at risk. I think that we're going to see regulations in terms of sanitation relative to what people are touching and when and where. I think you're going to see, you know, some regulations around the proximity for which people can exist with each other. So I think, yes, I think floor plans are going to change. And I think that how we approach buffets are going to change as well. If not buffets potentially being something that is not part of a post-COVID-19 society.
And this, I think, also is a part of customers wanting to know that you're providing an environment that keeps them safe, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think that as we learn more about this virus and we learn more about how we're going to contain it, we'll get better information from those that are regulating, and we'll start to regulate more relative to how we interact as a society. And there's still more to learn from that. But I would prepare as a restaurant professional, as a hotelier, that I am going to have to change my floor plans. I am likely going to lose covers because of it. My meeting space and what I'm allowed to do with my meeting space is likely going to change and be regulated. And so I think we need to start thinking about that and how we modify our floor plans. You know, buffets, I think you could see a world where buffets are still in practice, but the volume of guests going through the buffets is going to be tempered. And then you'll have likely sanitation methodology around utensils, and in every touch point that a guest would touch in a buffet will have to have some sort of sanitation methodology. But yeah, I think that those are some of the things we're going to start to see.
Yeah, and one thing just to add to this, had came up on one of the HT&G calls a couple of weeks ago that I was on. Even considering that buffets might be served in terms of your staff would serve all of them and they won't actually be a self-service buffet anymore is another, I think, real possibility in an effort to keep that level of sanitization.
Right. And Mike, there's another question asking to see if kiosks, do we see kiosks becoming virtual? Are there plans to bring your own device as opposed to interacting with the kiosk?
So with kiosks, what I'm seeing are a couple of things. I see kiosks still being viable and a valuable part of our business, but again, going back to sanitation. And so we're looking at screens, antimicrobial screens for our kiosks. I've seen even an interesting product that is almost peelable film, you know, where one guest would touch the kiosk and then the next guest would peel the film and would have a new sanitized screen to touch. So we're looking at those types of things. Obviously, you know, having hand sanitizer by your kiosk is going to be kind of new norm, and sanitized wipes, etc. So I think kiosks still have a place, but absolutely, mobile phone ordering, web ordering is going to quickly change our self-service landscape. I personally was seeing a trend already in terms of adoption of kiosks versus online ordering. And online ordering was certainly starting to be the trend in terms of how we manage self-service. So simple answer is yes. Online ordering, I think, is really going to start to be the norm and start to be the 80% of the 80-20 scale. You know, where kiosks were more 80% previously, and online ordering was kind of 20%.
Thanks, Mike. I think we're going to move on with Luke's remarks so that we have time to get all the material in. We will have more Q&A at the end of the session. If we don't get to everybody's question, we'll prepare answers and make sure everyone who's attending has access to those responses. Thanks. Luke?
Great. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Mike. And yeah, thank you, everyone, for your questions and making this interactive. So this really kind of goes into where the next section I was going on to was really need to think about what does this mean using kiosks with those touch points. And I think Mike touched on a number of different areas that we're already looking at Agilysys. You know, you look here at the cotton swabs and how often haven't we seen that when we go into stores to be able to press credit card devices. I don't think most of us probably want to have cotton swabs sitting at our counters. So we're working very close with many solutions that are out there. And a lot of it is, you know, there's displays and some of these screen covers that Mike was talking about that are antibacterial, providing those different coatings on surfaces, you know, having a single-use screen cover that can then be ripped off. There's many things that are out there in the kiosk space to still make kiosks a viable option. And we're going to talk a little bit about kiosks and being touchless in a moment here as well. Many other considerations with kiosks are just always important to look at. Obviously, you can't just put a kiosk in without considering things like ADA and how you handle special circumstances if someone needs a refund, can't find a reservation, or you know, maintenance and making sure you take care of those kiosks. You know, on the lodging side, kiosks have been used in hotels for check-in, check-out. Same type of scenarios here. Upsell is a big one as well, giving that opportunity where a guest could be, either you could do it at no charge during this time as a thank you for staying with us, or at a lower rate that they could have that opportunity to be able to go into a suite. It's a little extra revenue for operators, as well as gives the guest an experience that they really like. And then an interesting one is reissuing the key. When you think about all the different touch points of when someone comes by a front desk, how often isn't it that, I got locked out of my room or I left my key in the room, the ability to reissue the key from the kiosk. In our Guest Express kiosk from Agilysys, we cover all of these scenarios, and we're well integrated with all of our PMS offerings, Visual One, LMS, and our Guest Stay. So you think about everything else with kiosks and all the other possibilities that are out there. Etihad Airways is one who they have already implemented or are implementing kiosks that are going to check temperature, heart rate, and respiratory rate. You see this in airports already in APAC, that these checks are happening. I think it could very well become a norm throughout the globe, that just like in the US when 9/11 hit, we ended up having additional baggage security and additional security going through to be able to get to the gates. There's going to be a profound impact here. What that impact is a little bit yet to be known, but there's going to be concerns about false positives. What if someone gets pulled aside for screening? And I just actually was running through the airport and I was late for my flight, right? How do we handle those? How do you handle guest privacy and biometric concerns that are going to be out there? But these are going to be considerations that are going to be in place, especially with the talk of a vaccine being out further. Harvard, recently in one of their studies is saying, social distancing is going to be a norm until 2022. It's a pretty scary number to hear. That's 2 years from now. Facial recognition, again, getting back to the touchless aspects of kiosks, being able to recognize an individual, who they are, could be for payments or for loyalty. And it's going to be interesting to see if this opens up consumers to be more willing to do these types of things where they haven't been before. And another area with touchless with kiosks as well is thinking of virtual staff on video. So maybe you do have a check-in kiosk that actually there's someone that's in the back that's actually staffing and you're seeing them on video. Is that a possibility of what we'll see happen as well? Robotics, right? You saw these properties, and many of our customers have robots that will deliver towels or deliver that candy bar to your room. And those really kind of were seen as a guest experience moment. Didn't really necessarily augment staff, didn't have a whole lot of staff cost around it, but it was about the experience that property was creating. I think it's going to be very interesting to see now how real this becomes. You look at maybe a robot that could actually grab the towel off the shelf and deliver it to the room, and it's been sanitary the whole way along. Or are people going to shy away from robots because they have an emotional attachment that technology is replacing jobs? The new personal space. Mike started talking about this a little bit in his response to one of the questions that came in, but this is going to be significant across the industry. How are your front desk queues set up? How do you handle table service? How far are they spaced apart? How far do people have to sit away at the tables? How do you handle buffets? We spent a lot of time already talking about that. How do you handle a concierge? That moment where I would go up, I would sit down in a chair and someone was sitting right across the desk from me. Do concierges become virtual? Events and meetings. Probably, some of the largest impact here. There's some operators I know that are planning and determining how they could reopen at 50% of their previous capacity. And what does that do in terms of the revenue and the staffing and the technology that you need to support it? Valet. How does valet change? How does that interaction with valet change? Do you set your keys down somewhere and then someone grabs them? How do they sanitize your keys after the valet person has touched it? Everyone's going to be defining what their own personal space is. And this is going to be a customer experience, and it's going to be what their perception is. And we're going to have to be managing to a lot of varying perceptions. There'll be some that they're going to just go about business as usual, and then there will be others that won't. It's going to impact much more. We already talked a little bit about it, but think about breakfast that's offered in hotels in the morning. How does that change? How do social hours that hotels put on change? What happens to casino floors? Water parks. What do we do at water parks and people standing in line to use slides and other attractions and amusement parks? Some things to consider as well, we talked about a little bit earlier, is being able to limit the occupancy of a hotel. So maybe hotels, as they begin to reopen, the government might say that they have to limit to 25% or 20% or 30% occupancy. And then finding other ways to be able to maintain this personal space. With Agilysys DataMagine, we have the ability to do paperless forms, which can reduce the need to fill out hard papers. And you can have that online form on a web page that someone will fill out, basically do a digital signature and completely fill out that form. And again, that's giving the ability to operate like we do today, but with reduced touch points. When you look at Concierge and you look at some of the interactions, two-way text messaging that we have available with Agilysys Our Guest Service to allow that two-way communication between the guest and the hotel staff can still allow that high level of interaction. It's just in a different way. And these are all technologies we probably have been looking at over the course of time, but now is a forcing function to implement them as the new norm is changing. And it's really important that we enable and prepare our staff. Anxiety is going to be all over the place, and it is. And your staff is going to have so much anxiety as they come back in. And you need technology to help ease and manage this new norm. If you put everything on their shoulders, they're anxious about getting sick, they're anxious about interacting with people, they're anxious about having a job, and then all of a sudden they're anxious about all these new SOPs coming out. It's going to be challenging for them. And having technology in place that can help step them through, help be able to track and follow up what's being done, and to have checklists to ensure that they're completing those new SOPs helps reduce that level of anxiety. And the Agilysys Our Guest Service, I think really fits this bill well. It allows you to be able to track those tasks. Are you sanitizing the bathrooms and doorknobs every hour? Whatever that routine might be, how do you make sure that is getting completed? And as an operator, that just gives a peace of mind that you know these very important tasks that are part of your commitment to your guests are being taken care of. Another interesting topic that came up is, you think of all of the users out there that are using point of sale terminals today, right? They're having to go up, they touch them, I may use the terminal, and Mike uses it, and then Bob uses it. Well, do we really want to be all using the same terminal? With InfoGenesis Flex, you could buy enough tablets that each of your staff members actually have their own tablet assigned for the day. And then you could sanitize that tablet every day. So that way the staff doesn't need to worry about sharing this touch point that they would share across the entire staff. So many technology considerations here that we're looking forward to working with everyone moving forward. So I want to do a quick poll here, and then I'll move into some wrap-up remarks so we can get to Q&A. What tech would you implement for social distancing support? We've got mobile F&B ordering, contactless campus access, mobile check-in, checkout, personal tablets for servers. We're going to let those results come in here, and I will keep moving forward, and we'll review those in just a minute again. So being prepared for post-COVID-19, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we're all striving together to work very hard together as an industry to be able to come out of this much stronger than when we entered it. Many questions about when to reopen, what are business levels going to be like when they reopen, how do staff bargaining agreements impact when we can and can't reopen based on occupancy levels. All those things are going to be really important. So looking back at the poll, thank everyone for filling it out. We got about 41% that's saying mobile check-in, checkout, and another 34% that's saying mobile F&B ordering. I think that really shows that guests using their own device and performing that on their own mobile device is going to be an absolute norm moving forward. So it's important you're ready, right? We're used to those ups and downs of occupancy, but we're not used to closing and reopening our properties or running bare bones, right? And this impacts from front of house to back of house to thinking about how does our business get impacted if airline travel doesn't pick up. Maybe our business model is heavily based on individuals flying in for corporate events. over the course of the next couple of months, is it a marketing shift in order to be able to be focused on those that are doing a drive-to destination within a driving distance of your property? You know, on the food and beverage side, making sure you're ready throughout your entire restaurants and outlets that you have. You know, reducing physical touch points is going to be a very important piece that we talked about today, and making sure you have plans how to reduce them. You know, at check-in, how do you hand keys over? How do you handle the credit cards? You know, in restaurants, how do you handle the host and hostess interaction, paying for your meal, coffee shops, buffets that we talked about? Cyber criminals and cyber crime is on the rise, and there's been many reports on this. You know, cyber criminals take advantage of times like this to be able to hit home and hit someone's emotional side, so they click on a link they shouldn't. Many of the major brands are offering bounty programs to try to limit that. But what's important for all operators is to make sure all of your staff is trained in this. As everyone's going to be anxious, they're not going to be heightened to some of these things, and it's important to kind of recenter them and remind them that before clicking that link, do you really know who sent that email? Before downloading this attachment, do you really know who sent the attachment, and should you be downloading it? Rates and inventories. Now, we talked a little bit about, you know, the drive market versus fly market, and people, you know, this summer as things begin to open up, are they going to try to go attack their bucket list and try to travel to different areas they haven't been to, but all within driving distance? Do you have your right rates open? If you haven't been very busy, you know, are your rates still set for the summer at a really high level compared to what normal summer volumes are? Have you adjusted those? Is all of your content and your channel management up to date? So your content in terms of policies, maybe you've altered your cancellation policies. Is that updated on your channel managers? So that way it goes throughout every single channel. So you're not losing business because somebody thinks you're having an inflexible policy in this time. Talked about this earlier, but are your systems upgraded to the latest? Do you have the latest service packs and security packs? You know, and at Agilysys, we continue to invest heavily in our products during this time to ensure we're staying ahead of the curve with you. And so that way, again, coming out of this, we are all stronger. All your integrations up and running. If you really haven't been using your PBX, call accounting keys, making sure they're all up and running as you reopen. Staff training and retraining. You could have staff that maybe started just days or weeks before they were furloughed or laid off, and now they're coming back to work. Do you have to restart that training process because they haven't had the ability to practice on the job? You know, is there new tools and tech that they're going to have to learn? Maybe you've implemented mobile ordering and you're going to have to train them in terms of what does that mean to our operations? And most importantly, your commitment to your guests. Can't stress how important this is, but giving confidence to your guests and making sure you have a strong commitment to their health and safety. We have many global resources available on our site to wrap up here. Again, there covers everything from resources regarding government acts that are out there to other articles and news articles that are out there. We do have a couple upcoming webinars I want to mention here as well. We do next week are doing reopening webinars for our different products for Agilysys customers. These webinars are going to be focused on things you need to think about as you bring back up your PMS and your different applications, and what you need to be focused on to ensure your technology is ready to go as you reopen. We're also going to be having webinars in May on Our Guest Book, which is our online booking engine, Agilysys Customer Engagement Suite, which handles loyalty and cashless payments, and Our Guest Service, which is our service tracking and task management system. And those webinars are all coming up in May, and I encourage everyone to watch our resource site for more information on those as they come available, and also watch your email. Also want to note there's many industry resources out there if you haven't seen them already: HT&G, HFTP, National Restaurant Association, International Hotel Restaurant Association. These are all really valued resources, and I encourage everyone to make use of them. So as we transition here to Q&A, I want to thank everyone for your time today. I wish everyone the best of health and the creative mind power to be able to bond together as we work through this pandemic and the resulting economic impact. Together, we are Hospitality Strong. Bob, I'll turn it over to you for Q&A.
Thanks, Luke. It was great. Good content. I personally learned some things. I think we definitely have some questions here, so let me move to these. And they cover both hospitality and food and beverage, so jump in as appropriate. Here's one that just came in. On the F&B side, do you see a future where there are no physical menus?
I don't know if Mike's on, but I can.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to come off mute, guys. Sorry about that.
There you go.
Yep. Trying to get off mute. Yeah, I do. You know, I think that we're going to look to more guest-facing technology for table service restaurants. You know, being able to call up their own menu on their phone, being able to even, you know, place the order from there so that you can have, you know, some social distancing between the server and the table. So I definitely see, you know, menus changing, right? I mean, it's easier to clean a tablet even than it is to try to clean a bunch of menus. So I think we'll see a combination of tablets that the restaurant maintains that are the menus, and a combination of more enhanced guest-facing technology in the BYOD space.
Great. Luke, here's a lodging-related question. And this person mentions that they're talking about a technology standpoint, but they're curious about if we have any thoughts about how spa treatment rooms will fit into this equation, given that they're turned each hour. The booking time and effort for treatment rooms is the same as booking a hotel room, except it happens 10 times a day instead of once per day.
Yeah, I definitely think you know, spas are going to be interesting. There's a little bit of information out there already in terms of what physical therapists are doing today for massages and how they're sanitizing in between each guest. Most states have considered physical therapist masseuse as essential. So they've been continuing to work, and I think that's going to be an important area for us to continue to look at. But the turn time, definitely, I think, without a doubt, the turn time in between guests in a given room isn't going to be the traditional 10, 15 minutes that you might see. It's definitely going to be increased to be able to do the levels of sanitization. And one physical therapist masseuse I talked to here, that's exactly what they've done. They've spaced out their appointments 30 minutes apart, so that way they can do a full sanitization of the room.
Great. Mike, here's another one for you. It says, building on the contactless payment conversation, is there anything changing in the industry to allow us to process a card on a reservation versus taking the card physically on property and helping defend chargebacks and/or paying for card not present fees?
I think that might be more of a lodging question, yeah. Luke. Yep.
You want to ask Luke? Okay.
Yeah, I'll take it. Thanks, Mike. So, you know, that is probably one of the largest challenges right now that's out there. There are ways that Visa and MasterCard and some of the major card brands are working to handle this through verified credentials, where you're allowed to put a credential on file and give approval for that to be used time after time. One of the benefits, and I talked about it a little bit with our Guest Express Mobile, is we have the ability to do embedded ID verification. So then you can also prove that you did verify that, you know, this guest was Luke Pfeiffer. We did a facial verification, and we did a liveness check to make sure that the selfie that Luke took was actually of Luke and not as a picture of Luke. So a couple different aspects there. We're continuing to work very hard with the card brands, and then obviously through mobile check and doing ID verification helps in that space.
Great. Well, we're at the top of the hour. I think it's time to wrap it up. I would also like to thank everyone who took the time to join us today, and hope you got a lot of benefit from this. As you exit, you're going to be prompted to take a short survey. Please provide feedback so we can continue to develop relative content and improve these sessions. We are going to follow up with an email for you with resources we talked about today and access to those, as well as recording the session. So thanks again. We hope everybody has a great week. And again, stay healthy. Thank you.